Selling a little or a lot? Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. From the launch your own online shop stage to the first real-life store stage, all the way to the did we just hit 1 million orders stage? Shopify's there to help you grow. Shopify helps you turn browsers into buyers with the internet's best converting checkout. 36% better on average compared to the other leading commerce platforms. Because businesses that grow, grow with Shopify. Get a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/promo. Shopify.com/promo.
It's July 31st, 1255, and another remarkable event is about to be uncovered by Arion, Rebecca, and Olly, the Retrospectors.
So it was today in history in 1255 that a 9-year-old boy, Little Hugh of Lincoln, went missing. And stories about what happened next vary, but according to the chronicler Matthew Paris, wicked Jews shut him in a secret chamber, tortured him, paraded him around England, and then crucified him. And well, that's kind of the story that stuck for hundreds of years, becoming in the process one of the most famous blood libels in history.
Yeah, and very little of it can actually be attested. The only thing that we know probably happened was that a boy called Hugh did go missing in Lincoln. His body was apparently found in a well belonging to a Jewish man whose name was Copin. And there were more Jews than usual in Lincoln. There wasn't a very large Jewish population in England at the time. It was a very small community, but several families had gathered in Lincoln because there was a wedding taking place. Nonetheless, although there wasn't a huge amount to go on, the reaction was extremely swift. John of Lexington, who was a royal official and the brother of the Bishop of Lincoln, seized this Jewish man Copin, on whose property the well was located, and interrogated him, probably under a lot of torture, under which circumstances Copin unsurprisingly confessed, and to spare his own life, confirmed this rapidly growing conspiracy theory that a bunch of Jews had gathered, as they did every year, to sacrifice a Christian child.
Yeah, which was such a powerful anti-Semitic trope for centuries afterwards, and is still raised occasionally. This idea that Jews use the blood of children somehow in some kind of religious sacrifice. There are a few issues with that accusation. One, the consumption of any blood is strictly forbidden in Jewish law. That's one of the fundamental principles of kosher meat. You can take that from me as the grandson of a kosher butcher. So this is an unlikely rumour anyway. Two, Passover occurs in the spring. It's what Jesus was doing at the Last Supper, if you remember. So the concept of using blood to make matzahs for Passover wouldn't be happening in July anyway, even if that was true. And then three, this business of crucifying the child. Again, famously, crucifixion is what the Romans did to Jews. Again, hence Jesus, a Jew, being crucified. So it is an unlikely story, really, if anyone were to actually ask a Jew not under torture whether this was possible.
Yeah, and meanwhile, the motivations of John of Lexington in bringing this Jew Copin in and torturing him and getting him to say that he did it, well, the reason that's given for that is that he was the brother of Henry, who was the new Bishop of Lincoln and a servant of the king. And most historians kind of conclude that the likely aim was to lend credibility to this accusation against Copin, hoping to profit from a new cult of pilgrims and their gifts who would then come to Lincoln to try and sort of pay their respects to this poor boy, Little Hugh of Lincoln, and then sort of create an industry around it. And, this only intensified when the king got involved.
Yeah, the Lexington family, as we mentioned, were personally connected to Henry III, and the monarch came to Lincoln himself to oversee the proceedings. While he was there, Copin was dragged through the streets of Lincoln and then hanged. 90 other Jews had been arrested. 18 of them were hanged pretty much immediately because they didn't want to participate in this show trial. 2 were pardoned. They had connections who were able to get them out, leaving 71 people to stand trial for ritual murder. This happened in February 1256. They were unsurprisingly found guilty, but then something weird happened. By May, they had all been quietly released. Behind the scenes, it's thought something was going on. Friars had possibly interceded on their behalf, perhaps afraid this was all getting out of hand. What they wanted was to create a pilgrim site that could be very profitable. They didn't necessarily want it to be connected to a huge mass executions. It's like, let's concentrate on this lovely, profitable shrine we now have. There's also some suggestion that the death sentence were commuted on the payment of a large fine. It's possible the whole thing was a bit of an extortion scam. This was a very common occurrence for the Jewish community in England at the time. They had this strange relationship where on one hand they were under the patronage of the king, so they did have certain rights that were protected by the monarch, but also the monarch could turn around and easily extort them for as much money as they wanted because their safety in England depended on the king's favour. So this wouldn't have been an uncommon occurrence. But the strange thing is, by May of this year, despite this huge hysteria, most of those who'd been arrested had just been released to go about their business. There was obviously an awareness that this ritual murder had not happened.
It may have been due to an intercession by the king's brother, Richard of Cornwall, as well. But to go back to this idea of why it would be financially beneficial to accuse Jews of something like this for everyone else, takes you back to the moneylending thing, the Shylock thing. Why was it that most moneylenders in Britain at the time were Jewish? Well, that's because the Christian church forbade the practice of moneylending, but people needed moneylending. So what they did is they said that Jews who were serfs, basically, chattels of the king legally, Jews would be allowed to do it because they weren't Christians. And then, of course, if you blame Jews for something as dramatic as child sacrifice, your obligation to pay your debt to those murderers vanishes. So there are a lot of people periodically who wanted to basically avoid settling their arrears, who were able to say, oh, this Jew did that, and therefore if this Jew did that, I don't owe them any money because they're a criminal and they deserve capital punishment. So when you had a situation where people were saying, let's round up the Jews for killing this child, a lot of the city's citizens would have been content for that to happen because it meant they were clearing their bills. And it's worth saying King Henry III had actually sold his rights over the Jews to the Duke of Cornwall, and the only way that he could get his hands on their money was to have them convicted of a capital offence, because the property of anyone executed was forfeit to the king. So there was actually financial motivation for him as well.
The myth of Hugh continued to resonate well into the 19th century, with European anti-Semitic polemicists trying often to prove its veracity. In the 20th century, a well in Lincoln's former Jewish neighbourhood was falsely advertised as the well in which Hugh's body was found, though it was later discovered to be constructed before 1928 to attract tourists. Meanwhile, the Church of England sort of apologised. In 1955, they placed a plaque at the site of Little Hugh's former shrine in Lincoln Cathedral, which reads, "By the remains of the shrine of, inverted commas, Little St. Hugh." Trumped-up stories of ritual murders of Christian boys by Jewish communities were common throughout Europe during the Middle Ages and even much later. These fictions cost many innocent Jews their lives. Lincoln had its own legend, and the alleged victim was buried in the cathedral in the year 1255. So even the church was like, oh, okay, well, we sort of messed up here. But like,
yeah, but only
700
in 1959.
years.
Yeah.
In
the shadow of the Holocaust, do they put that
on? Took
on?
you a sweet time. Yeah.
They were like, we're 95% sure that Jews didn't do it.
Well, especially since, again, the whole meme of the blood libel probably originates in Christianity, because it seems like it may have been targeted at Christians originally by pagans and by Muslims who misunderstood the doctrine of the drinking of the blood of Christ and eating the Eucharist. That's probably where the blood libel comes from. It's probably nothing to do with Jews in the first place.
But of course, this was a time when it was really easy for rumours about what Jews did to spread. And part of that was because there was increasing social segregation. You know, the first Jews known to arrive in England were Norman merchants who came after the conquest. And at first, relations seemed to have been relatively frictionless. You know, they were a very, very tiny community. Most people would certainly never have met any of them. So there weren't really the same rumours that would grow later. What had happened a couple of years before was that Henry III had imposed this new statute of Jewry, which made it extremely clear that Jews were unwelcome guests at best in England. The first section literally says they can only stay in the country if they, quote, serve us in some way. And under that statute, Jews were banned from entering churches, from employing Christians, living with Christians, even eating with Christians. They also had to wear a yellow badge, you know, yikes. And the statute even specified they should lower their voices when they were in temples so that passing Christians wouldn't be able to hear them. So if you imagine, you know, this is a scenario where Christians and Jews are literally banned banned from having any interaction whatsoever, it's easy to see how a myth would spread extremely quickly. There was no reason for you to disbelieve it because these are people that you literally knew nothing about.
Yeah, they're people that are officially separated in every way. And even if they were integrated, the religion specifically is not a proselytizing, conversion-based religion. Like, it's very easy to say they're getting up to things in secret ceremonies because
always whispering in temple.
The whole point is that other people aren't invited in. You're either born into it or you're not. So, it's not like the Christianity that people of the time were used to, going around converting everybody. It's a secret what happens.
Yeah, and I think that sort of business of we are the chosen ones is another thing that contemporary historians go, that is very alienating to the communities in which you're living, and is probably something to do with the fact that blood libel in various forms has, as you were saying, Olly, kind of continued into the modern era. There's emerged a persistent rumour that global elites torture children to harvest the chemical adrenochrome from their blood, which they say is then injected in order to stay healthy and young. It's a favourite topic of the interconnected QAnon and Pizzagate conspiracy communities, and this idea of so-called adrenochrome harvesting isn't outwardly blamed on Jews, but on satanic and globalist elites, which are these dog whistle terms for the far right. It's still the same thing, just dressed up in this new terminology.
It's amazing the lengths people will go to make matzah taste good. Yeah. It's unleavened bread. It's supposed to be horrible.
Tomorrow.
Chubby Checker's first name isn't Chubby and his last name isn't Checker.
No way.
Ditch the ads and get a Sunday episode when you join Club Retrospectors. Patreon.com/retrospectors.
Save big money now at Menards. Mastercraft has been making great doors inside and out for over 50 years. Choose from the best in-stock selection of doors, ready to take home today. Or design your door your way in-store or on Menards.com. Save big on Mastercraft doors at Menards, America's #1 home improvement retailer for customer satisfaction, according to J.D. Power. For J.D. Power 2024 award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.